Okay, folks, I want to discuss the idea of intellectual genius with you in a way that I hope will ultimately be empowering, okay? So, there are, I guess, a couple standard approaches to the topic of human intelligence out in society, and depending on where you go, you have to know how to entertain, one perspective or the other. Um, and you will find, a decent body of academic literature trying to support maybe a few different primary notions of like the origins and maximization of human intellectual functioning, okay? So you should know about the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And then you should also study topics relating to, you know, I guess the term would be like hereditarianism versus maybe cognitive enhancement and so on and so forth, okay? I'm not going to say, I don't know, I have a couple of different perspectives on this. So on the one hand, I do recognize that like if you come from, a long line of intellectuals and you yourself happen to be brilliant, that's not remotely shocking to me, whether that's primarily due to genetic reasons or formative training or something. But I want to introduce you to a figure today that might actually stimulate your intellect. There's a decent book written about him. I think it might be called The Man Who Knew Infinity or something. And his name is Srinivasa Ramanujan. So, crucially, his parents did not have any sort of impressive intellectual background, and he himself did not have, a wealth of intellectual tools and resources with which to sort of hone and sprout his faculties, okay? And yet he ended up making absolutely astonishingly brilliant contributions to the world of mathematics. So, back when I was foolish enough to assume that I could actually advance rather far in certain mathematical disciplines, I studied him and a number of other seminally important figures. So the key insight to derive from the life and achievements of Srinivasa Ramanujan, may he rest in peace, is that genius can kind of pop up out of nowhere. Okay, so people on my father's side have long been creatives, even though they've never been rich. And on my mother's side, there's certainly had not been like a long line of, we'll say, intellectual specialists in terms of their professions. And yet, there have been certain times at which I demonstrated abilities that you would not predict I would have on the grounds of like a purely uncharitably hereditarian lens on my prospective intellectual achievements. So I happen to be something of a mutant, like a mutant in terms of my intellectual abilities, and certainly in a sense in terms of my temperament. I don't have a very strong natural craving to be in the presence of other human beings. Um, and in fact, my inclination toward being alone is so pronounced that people who actually know about the relevant terminology concerning such things accuse me of having a schizoid personality. That's not schizo, it's schizoid. Schizoid. So, um, sometimes I guess what I mean to say is like, if you have a concern that you don't come from a line of geniuses and that, maybe you'll never produce any geniuses in your bloodline or something on some probabilistic grounds, then you have to understand that genius can pop up out of nowhere, okay? So, how do I put this? Sometimes you're going to be in the presence of people who treat you like you're basically a subhuman because you don't have, the right skin tone, the right cranial size, the right last name, the right exhibitionistic tendencies regarding your intellect, and so on and so forth. And you have to understand that like those people have a worldview that they've been developing in private, and that limits the scope of their perception, and therefore it limits their capacity to identify and harvest talent to the maximum extent for ends that are ultimately going to suit society's, health. in the long run. So once you understand the biases that different demographics succumb to, whether they work in, you know, the educational profession or the field of intelligence research or something, you just know how to survive, okay? You should operate in such a way that you can have a meaningful, beautiful conversation with, a homeless person and with someone who has specialized in the field of intelligence research for the past 4 decades. Thank you for watching and have a good day. Stay sharp and sober, and God bless you.